everything's Archie. Archie's here, Betty's here, Veronica too, Reggie's here, and here comes Jughead and Hot Dog too. So everything's Archie. Come on, let's go.
He is America's favorite teenager. Created in 1941 by John Goldwater and Bob Montana, red-headed Archie Andrews was the high schooler who could never choose between two gorgeous girls, blonde Betty Cooper or brunette Veronica Lodge. Along with best friend Jughead Jones and rival Reggie Mantle, the trio attended Riverdale High in a tremendously popular line of comic books. But in 1968, the Archie Comics empire was given a seismic jolt into the contemporary scene when Filmation Studios' The Archie Show debuted on Saturday morning television. How did an animated series based on a teen comic book become one of the highest-rated TV shows on the planet? How did the Archies sell millions of records? And what was the deal with groovy dances like the Weatherby and the Hamburger? In this exclusive documentary, you'll find out the answers to these questions and more from Filmation founder and Archie's producer Lou Scheimer. Return with us to the adventures of Hot Dog, the Chocolate Shop, bubblegum pop music, and all the fun at Riverdale High.
Come on, let's go with the Archie Show.
The Archie Show. First show was on the air September the 14th of 1968. Went into production late 67. And it all started on a rainy day. Was it? No, this was not really a rainy day. We showed Fred Silverman the presentation, which at that day was really just a comic book. I mean, if you see this comic book, you know what the show is like. The whole concept was really brought to us by a guy named Irv Wilson, who's still around doing something as an agent. We presented it with a stack of comic books. Cheapest presentation we ever made, and probably one of the most successful shows we ever produced. I had never heard of Archie. I was a little too young for... I wasn't too young for that. I was too old for that. But when the more I saw the show, I looked at the comic books and saw that the possibility of endless stories made it really effective as far as I was concerned. I talked to, as I recall, this was not a very difficult presentation because Silverman was really prepared because he knew about the show. And we had done a number of shows that were very successful on CBS.
Hey, I've got it! Is it catching?
The reason I knew it was going to be successful was Silverman started laughing and clapping, and he never did that at anything. I mean, this really hit him right where he understood it. He understood it. He knew what would happen with those characters, how they could be used. And we did one thing that I think was a major addition, and that was the use of music as integral to the show. And it gave you something that was not being done for children's shows. It was the first time that a children's show had a group created for them. We were in a strange period that children's programming had reached in Saturday morning. The shows were basically not really all that good for kids. We, of course, did nothing wrong. but truthfully, we didn't. The adventure shows we did had morals of some sort. We did Superman, Batman, Aquaman, King of the Seven Seas, Teen Titans. I mean, if it flew around and had a cape, we had done some version of it. And I really thought it was appropriate then, especially then, because the atmosphere about children's programming had nothing to do with it. Was on the air. It had to do with a lot of people yelling and screaming who never watched the shows. And I thought it would be wonderful to find a subject or a group of characters that would be the absolute opposite of the shows that were being produced.
Hey, you can say that again.
You could look at these guys, and it's not like looking at Superman, where he had two characters. Once the dynamic super guy and just the reporter. And these guys had everything. They had a nut who could do anything but go to school. They had a kid who loved two girls and didn't know how to make it work. We had two girls, one rich, one poor. How do you make that work? You had a dog who didn't care about any of that madness because all he wanted to do was eat hamburgers, I think. Or one of them wanted to eat hamburgers. And then you had Jughead, who you loved to hear and see. And they all liked music. It was perfect for music. And we found a guy who really was perfect for it, and it was Don Kirshner. My partner was a guy named Norm Prescott. Norm passed away a year ago, but he came from the music business. And he knew Don Kirshner, who had just done a wonderful series for Columbia Pictures called The Monkees. And he wanted to show them, because he had a row with Columbia, that he could do it all over again. And he did do it all over again. He did it with vim and victory written all over his face. He produced the shows and he delivered them to us whole. We told him what we wanted to do and what the attitude should be and what kind of stories we were doing. All that stuff was delivered finished, which was the nicest way to work. Because there was a lot of work in those. Those shows were tough. And I was just looking at one, and I haven't looked at one in 25 years. And boy, that was good stuff. The voices of the Archies were really done by Ron Dante and Tony Wine. I met Ron Dante, but it was long after the show was done. Tony Wine, I don't know. Norm took part in that and handled that wonderfully. Actually, there was another thing. They were good looking. We made some changes to the characters because there were sort of a lot of lines going on. And we got rid of a lot of lines because every time you have a line in there, it's got to be animated, looked around, and it has a tendency maybe not to work. So the comic books have the same characters, and if you look at our characters, they look sort of like the comic books, but they're more animatable.
Reggie was just too much competition for me.
Alvin McKinnon probably was the most interesting of the voice people. He was a magnificent man, a great voice. And he looked like he was about 122 years old. And that was giving him the benefit of the doubt. He did Archie and he did Hot Dog. You're now probably showing a picture of Dal as I talk right now.
Egad, I lost my head. And I was such a handsome lad, too. A real beauty.
Howie Morris, you remember as the little guy in the shows. He was the one that was always wrapped around Sid Caesar's knees as he was being pulled across the floor. Howie Morris was Jughead, who really, in his own way, was the star of the show. Archie was, always a good soul and doing things right and keeping people happy and falling in love with two girls at the same time. But Jughead provided all the fun. He did everything wrong and somehow he came out right all the time. And he really... He handled the dog. They were alike in many respects. The dog allowed us to have an offstage voice come in and give sort of like a Greek chorus and get you right to the story very fast. We needed the relationship between Jughead and the dog. They were two dumb characters that were right all the time. And there is a big difference from publishing a comic book and doing something that is living almost in front of your eyes. And we did the funny stuff for the dog to do, and he heard inside his brain, and he was talking to the audience all the time, and it helped. The only thing he didn't do was sing. Did he? Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, thank you. What a groovy dancer. Groovy. I am all mine, Betty.
I think this is the first time we used Jane Webb in a series. And she was superb, and we did a lot of work with Jane. She was a lovely, gracious, beautiful woman, and a very talented woman. If you had 20 women in a show, if it were legal, she'd do all 20 of them. I mean, she was an extraordinary talent. In fact, she was the voice in the radio show of Tom Mix. And she was a little girl in Chicago. She was like 14 or 15. And when she started into the business of doing voiceovers. And I used to listen to all that stuff when I was growing up. And wait a minute, she wasn't older than I. She must have lied about her wage, or Oh, wait a minute. I would have been lying about my age. Anyway, she was terrific.
Veronica acts like she doesn't know I'm alive. I'll just bring the fact to her attention.
John Irwin, you will not believe, who was the voice of Reggie Mantle, later became the voice of He-Man. John was extraordinary, and he created a character for Reggie Mantle that you couldn't create just by drawing. I mean, he gave it life, and you could write stories just because you knew what John could do. I called him once, and he told me he couldn't do the job. And I said, yes, you can. He said, what job? I said, He-Man. He said, no, not me. I said, yep, you. He said, well, maybe I'll try for you, Lou. And I said, well, I think you'll do. He never had to try. And he wanted to know, why can't... He said, yeah, I mean, I don't have those voice. I can't do that voice with the deep voice of a real tough guy. I said, that's not what we want. I want the feeling you got with John Irwin doing Reggie Mantle and the little things you can do. I said, we don't want that guy. We want the same quality of guy that you did for Archie and his friends. And he went ahead and did it, both for Archie and his friends and for the other show.
My, what a talented group of students we have at Riverdale.
Saturday morning was covered with guys running around in capes and muscles and busting cars and yelling and screaming at each other and banging heads. And that's not Archie. And there was a whole segment of the audience that was not being fairly appreciated by the people who were doing the work that was being seen by these young people. Most shows were really aimed at 12 and under, and there was nothing for young teenagers. Not really. Nobody was doing shows about dancing and singing and dating and high school and the problems that youth have. And it was about time to do a show that was at least appreciated by an older group of young people. So the show that came on the air was so different from everything that was on the air for them. The show went through the roof. I mean, there was nothing close to it. We were doing songs, we were doing dating problems, we were dealing with nuts in the school, the teachers who were making the kids crazy, the fathers and the school principals who were the normal kids were just, well, you got the picture. It was like nothing else on television.
And now, a brand new dance to watch and learn.
We had a segment called The Dance, and we used it again during the song. So we utilized with material from that part of the show into this part of the show. And for my life's blood, I have no idea why we did it. But if you want to dance, you watch the shows. Don't come to me if you have any problems.
Bang, bang, shang-a-lang.
Then there was Sugar Sugar. Now, how can you really think that a show that's on the air about 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning, shown to theoretically not that many people, but that's not quite right, and a song called Sugar Sugar that sells 7 million records? It proves something about, number one, the value of music, and number two, the strength of a network show. Now, there was Jingle Jangle, which was another one of the songs, none of which have words that you can remember, and Bang Shang-a-Lang. I was walking down a dark street in the south of Spain, and it was spooky, and I hear a song being played in Spanish that year. Now, I'm not going to try and do this thing in Spanish, but that showed you how fast this went around the world. It was Sugar Sugar. It went over the world. I mean, it was an enigma, and it was incredible that we could do that with one little television show.
It was all done with mirrors, wasn't it? Tell me, Archie.
To show how this permeated the musical culture of our country, Ed Sullivan, who would not put anything like a children's show on the air, gets Sugar Sugar and borrows the animation portion that we used. I mean, it was amazing.
You're gonna see me on TV. You're gonna see me everywhere. Everyone will stop and say, yeah, yeah.
My family and I were listening to the roundup of the top shows of the year in 1968 or 69 or 70, whatever the devil was. I can't remember which year it was now because we were on for so many years. And I said, well, I guess we missed it. And they turned back and they said, we're going to play the beginning of the shows and you'll see which ones we came out. And they played a Beatles song, which seemed perfectly reasonable to me. And then after that, they played Sugar Sugar. And I darn near fainted.
Archie!
Archie became overnight a national hero. He was on cereal boxes. The song, Sugar Sugar, was on one of those cereal boxes where you rip the middle out of the box and threw the cereal and the stuff away, and then you had the record. And they sold millions of those. You know, you talk about shares and how they keep shows on the air, and today, if you have a show on the air and it's doing a 20 or 25 share, that's a masterpiece of well-done shows, were perfect for the audience. Archie had a 55 share. Now, I don't know how we did that.
Archie!
It was the first Saturday morning show to use a laugh track. Why do you use a laugh track? Because it makes the audience want to laugh with all the other people who are watching. And you felt like part of the show more than just an observer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's as good an explanation as any.
We actually didn't use any of the writers who worked on the comic strips at all. The people who worked on the shows were animation people. And it's just a different kind of thing. I mean, it's live, it's moving, it's talking, and it gives you much more of the value of the human voice. Because when you're reading a comic book, you do what you want to do with that voice. When you watch it in television, that voice makes you do it better or enjoy it more, and you've got to write for those guys. And sometimes a character becomes more important because he works so well. I mean, we've done shows where characters come out of the show and become heroes in the show because they were great to work with.
These are just costumes I built for advertising the theater's spook show.
There was a character named Dilton Doily. I loved Dilton. He was a fussy little boy who was a brilliant boy. I mean, he can do anything with his mind. And I thought that's a good character to work with. You laugh at the fact that he is like an adult, and you laugh at the adult that's inside him, and he could do anything. Now then there was Big Moose. Now in the comic books, he was in there and out of there, but Big Moose was a great character. And those characters would come, well, for instance, out of the show as a guest character was Sabrina, and she was introduced in the show and became a huge hit. Fred Silverman went on vacation. He took with him some food and some comic books. And in one of the comic books, and they were Archie comics, and Fred was the head of children's programming at CBS at the time. He called me when he got back from his vacation. He said, I saw a really terrific character, and you ought to go talk to Mr. Goldwater and see if you can get the rights. And I said, who or what was the character? He said, well, he was a little character in the bottom strip of one of the Archie comics, and her name was, he said, her name was, oh yeah, Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I said, that sounds like a fun thing. And I did go to John Goldwater, who was president of Archie Comics, and I said, why don't we try to introduce her into something and see whether it works, because she's their age, she got magic, she does these things that kids would love to be able to do, and she lives with two sweet aunts who are witches. Archie was such a hit that one of our problems was trying to figure out how to make the shows different every year. So what we did is the Archie show, which was this first show, the Archie Comedy Hour, that's the one where we photographed a live audience watching a show on stage. And what we did was we went cut back from the live show, and it went all through the show. The kids and my two kids were in the front seats, and Hal's kid was sitting right beside them. Archie's TV Funnies. Kids in school decided they're running the school paper, that they're going to put comics in the school paper. And we did Dick Tracy, we did a bunch of them. We did one that we didn't have the rights to do. I thought I had made a deal with the guy who owned the comedy. And he watched it one Saturday morning. And he called me, and he said, "Lou," and he said, "Yeah." What? He said, "You ran my character on your show. You don't have the rights to do it." I said, "I think I made a mistake." And and he was a very nice guy. And he said, "Well, if you only show it once," he said, I won't cause any trouble." My favorite was the U.S. of Archie. It was really a show with a message. It was a show with the concept being based on reality. And what we did is we put the Archies in costumes of various moments in U.S. history, and you could watch that show and you could pass a test the next day about history with the Archies. And we did it with comedy and music. It was a fun show, too. The Archie Sabrina Hour, we did a special with Sabrina. Ed Silverman had come back and said, "Can you get the rights to that character?" And we did do this special, and the special got great numbers. And we did the next season. We did the special, and it had some great. The minor characters were the two ant witches, who were always doing. I mean, they were not good witches. They were not bad people. They were just inept. And they get in trouble, and Sabrina would get them out. And Sabrina was a really, truly teenage girl who wanted to be like every other girl in the class, but she just had that wonderful, whatever thing she did. I think she did ears, maybe. Am I doing ears? Yeah, you saw him that time. I think she did ears.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
The legacy of Archie was that soft comedy without violence can create an audience that is a magnificently dedicated audience, and an audience that wanted more and different every year. And Fred Silverman, I must say, really did it very well. He could do an hour show just by buying a few episodes, because by buying 6 more episodes, he got another year. And we got up to an hour long. We got up to 8 different shows. I think that's never been done before or after. It was a unique show, and a lot of people try to do the same sort of thing, using the same kind of characters, but they were never Archie.
'Cause someday I'm gonna be a star, so don't touch my guitar. 'Cause someday I'm bound to be a star.
The people at the comic book company did something very, very nice. We had no idea it was happening. They did a whole comic book with the kids, the Archie kids, visiting Filmation. Ta-da! And I really got very angry because my 2 partners were very, very nice looking in this book, and I didn't like the way I looked. Well, I look just the way I look now. That's why I don't like it. I know what I'm going to do now. I have a makeup person going to change all of that for the first time. Ta-da! See how much better I look now? Why are you hitting me in the head? You did a good job, kid.
Would somebody tell me what's going on around here?
I've told you a lot of secrets about Archie, but not all of them. Now, what you do is watch for the next batch of secrets coming your way on the next batch of DVDs. You'll be shocked. You'll be amazed. And I will faint.
We'll see you, Pop. We're cutting out for a while.
Hi, I used to be Lou Scheimer. No, I can't do that. I don't even know if I used to be. Now, you've seen a lot of the things. Get out of the way, Fly. Get out of there. There must be a gang of the thing. You will see my personal Fly. You will see my Freddie Silverman show. I've told you a lot about the secrets of Archie, but this is just the beginning. If you watch and you see what's coming up, you'll be astonished. You'll be, I can't tell you what you're going to be. So you're going to have to watch yourself. And I'm going to kill that Fly. He did it again. I have a feeling that's a Hanna-Barbera Fly.